You get to work with your hands every day. What's so rewarding about that?
The reward is the sense of accomplishment and creation at the end of the day. I can look back and I made this, or I did that, or I've got half of that completed. You can come in, feel it, touch it, carry it. It'll be here tomorrow, next year. And that's what I like about working with my hands. Is that satisfaction at the end of the day. I'll be, sometimes bone tired. I feel every ache and pain, but yeah, at the end of the day, I'm tired. There's a great deal of satisfaction that comes from a day in the shop well spent.
Welcome to Second Act Stories. Every 2 weeks, we take a look at a courageous individual pursuing a more rewarding life in a second act. I'm your host, Andy Levine.
And I'm Andy's co-host, Scott Merritt. So Andy, for today's episode, you traveled to Hilton Head, South Carolina, one of my favorite places on the planet, and you met with Sergio Raynal. Tell me about your interview with him.
So we met at Sergio's studio. He is a craftsman. He builds amazing furniture from gorgeous wood. In this, he uses old-style artisan techniques. He never uses a nail. He never uses a screw. It's really beautiful, beautiful stuff, Scott.
Well, it sounds like he's a master craftsman, but what did he do before he opened his studio?
He worked for years as a top consultant with KPMG. He had a billing rate of $1,400 per hour for his time.
$1,400 per hour. And now he's building furniture.
That's it?
Okay. Well, this should be interesting. Let's hear Sergio Raynal's second act story.
My father was French, left after the war, went to Venezuela, as a lot of Europeans did. Met my mom. They honeymooned in Niagara Falls, Canada. And they liked it so much, they moved there a year later. So they moved, I was a baby when they moved to Canada. And grew up in Ottawa, loved it.
I read somewhere that your father owned a furniture store.
He did. He started out after he left France. He started out sweeping the sidewalk in front of this furniture store, and he ended up owning the furniture store. Very handy, lots of projects around the house. He did invest in real estate, so he owned some duplexes and triplexes. And I remember he'd bring me along to fix things up. I have very early memories of climbing very tall, rickety ladders, and he would hold my ankles and have me paint the eaves on the underside of a roof.
After 16 years of Canadian winters, the family eventually moved to Florida, which Sergio describes as the 11th Canadian province. After graduating high school, Sergio went to the New College of Florida and focused on mathematics and economics.
Well, my first job out of college, I got hired by a local developer. It was a big mucky muck. This is in Sarasota, Florida. He had a commercial industrial real estate brokerage development business. And he was really prescient in understanding the importance of data at a time when nobody did that. And he hired me straight out of college, and he had this conference room. He says, "Go nuts, kid." I put up big U.S. quadrangle maps of the 2-county, 3-county area that he serviced on the walls, mounted glass on top, and then I started jotting down everything I could, road developments, new construction projects in the planning stages, what have you. Then he started inviting business leaders and clients and contacts and banking people to come in and have me do a presentation to them. And I thought, well, it's not magic. This is all publicly available information. If you go through building permits and long-term road plans and rail lines and all the rest of it. And I had accumulated quite an intense database of information. And I got used to speaking in public in front of big groups of usually older, more important people.
Sergio was recruited by a real estate consulting firm called Landauer Associates and moved to Los Angeles. There, he was approached by tax and advisory giant KPMG.
KPMG was one of those firms that recruited me, came came knocking on my door, and they made me a good offer. And that transported me to yet a different level. So now I was doing national and international work and working on billion-dollar deals and billion-dollar portfolios, especially with the RTC and all of the failures that came about with that.
RTC stands for?
The Resolution Trust Corporation.
Okay.
They took over the failed banks and savings and loans. And then we worked through the Korean, their version of the RTC, and in Japan. I was a senior analyst, senior executive doing consulting and leading teams, evaluating portfolios of properties or busted deals, busted loans. I got to a pretty high level there at KPMG.
I gather woodworking became a hobby for you when you're in this high pressure sort of consulting business, that this was the way you let off steam.
Yes, woodworking
right?
had always been a hobby. I mean, down to my childhood, my dad would do some fairly rudimentary woodworking. So I had a complement of tools in the garage, and it was a hobby and an outlet.
What was the first project you did with a client?
That's a very good question. It started with a friend of a friend who I got introduced to, and she had just bought a condo in Beverly Hills, needed some work done. And the friend had suggested to her, you should talk to Sergio. He's got good ideas and he knows what to do. So I was flattered they wanted to meet with me. And so I met her at a little coffee shop, and she shows me what she wants done. She wanted a library built in the condo. And I said, okay. And we toured the condo, and I said, well, let me think about it. I'll do some sketches for you. So I meet with her again in a week, and I show her some sketches I've drawn. Again, I'm not expecting to actually do this work. I'm just giving her some ideas. And she says, oh, this looks great. And she says, what do you think this would cost? And here is where my acumen as a financial analyst and executive really paid dividends, because I said, oh, I don't know, $3,000-$4,000. I'm thinking materials. I haven't put in any labor. Her response is, when can you start? So next thing you know, I've agreed to do this job for what is basically for free.
The cost of the wood.
The cost of the materials. I'm working in the garage, building this stuff out. And I borrowed a friend's truck to do the delivery, and had a couple other friends help me deliver it. And we get there on the day of, and it's Beverly Hills. It's a condo in Beverly Hills. You need to make an appointment to use the elevator and the freight elevator, and there's certain hours you have to abide by. And we get that sorted out. So I drop off things with two of my friends that are helping me out, and I go back to get the next load. I get a call from them, hey, this won't fit. We can't fit it in the elevator. I said, you're kidding me. I know I measured everything. Of course it fits. They can't get it to fit. I'll be back. My friend's truck, the gas gauge wasn't working, and he neglected to tell me this. So I run out of gas at the top of going over Mulholland, and what else can go wrong? And so I wait for AAA. I get the guy. I go back. I help the guys. I said, listen, you tip it this way. Boom. We get it in the elevator. We get it out. She's got a painting crew, an out-of-town painting crew that she hired to paint the condo while I'm trying to install this floor-to-ceiling cabinet. I'm making sawdust. They're painting. They're not happy. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. I've got 2 parking tickets on the truck. It was that kind of day. I was just running out of gas, the parking tickets, and I loved every minute of it. I was bone tired at the end of it, and I just loved every minute of it. That was the first job.
So why did you love every minute of it?
Well, it was different. It was real. I've always prided myself on being a problem solver. I mean, that's basically what being a consultant is or was. And, this was, how many problems can we throw at you? Mm. And at the end of the day, there was a lot of satisfaction that you could, hey, I made this. And that was my first job.
When you were done with that, what was the path to, I want to do this full time. I want to quit my job.
I continued. That job led to other jobs, smaller jobs that I would do on the weekends or evenings, nothing quite to that scale. And, more and more I kept enjoying them. And, from the first one, I started charging a little bit, making a little money. Of course, nothing like the salary I was earning at KPMG with salary and benefits and so forth. It didn't even come close to, I mean, I was maybe making 10% of what I was making. And then there came the event that really propelled me to leave KPMG. And it's one of the hardest things that I've had to do in life. Um, the consulting world was a very profitable world for all of the big companies. The ones that would get us in trouble was tax and accounting would bring it down. So the powers that be come in and visit us and say, hey, don't expect much in the way of bonuses for you and your team this year because Houston and Tampa had a flat year and it's just not going to be there. And I said, well, what's that got to do with us? We had a very profitable year, brought in a lot for the company, and my guys have worked their butt off. I mean, and so okay, I had to choose a couple of guys to lay off of my team, and there was no one that was a parent to choose. So okay, I got to sit them down, and I laid off a couple of guys, and it was tough. A week later, we signed Phil Mickelson to wear the KPMG logo on his hat and his golf bag and his shirt. Paid him $10 million to do that. I was enraged. I said, that's what these layoffs were for, so we could pay this guy to wear a logo. I was just enraged by that. And then, it was just apparent to me I didn't want to stay there. I started to see, well, maybe I can make something out of this woodworking, and I'm certainly happier doing that. And so I walked away from stock options that ended up being worthless anyway, and walked away from a very nice salary and a very good situation to, do this fledgling woodworking thing.
Did friends and colleagues think you were nuts?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because colleagues thought I was very brave, and they wish they had the balls to do what I was doing. Then another set assumed that, well, he's made his nut and he's sitting on a giant fortune and he's just this is his way of parachuting away, and it wasn't. I took a very long walk off a short pier, and I had some savings saved up, but I'd just gone through this this divorce as well, and there wasn't a whole lot left in the kitty. And building up this business, I used up my 401k, all my savings. I plowed back into, making this business what it is today.
In terms of buying equipment?
Buying equipment. Ultimately, I had to move out of the garage eventually. Mm-hmm. Signed a lease and then doubled the space that I had. As I said, at my peak, I had 4, 5, 6 guys working for me. And to turn it into real business, I went through all my savings and was making really a fraction of what I made at KPMG.
I read that you never use a nail or a screw. So these are sort of old world furniture making and cabinetry techniques. Where did you learn that if you didn't learn that from your dad?
Well, self-taught, really. I've read some books. This work is not necessarily that complicated. It takes patience and it takes practice and repetition to develop your skills. One of the great things about woodworking is not that wood is cheap, but there's always another piece of wood. If you make an error, go to the wood pile, you grab another stick, and you do it again until you get it right. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning.
You get to work with your hands every day. What's so rewarding about that?
The reward is the sense of accomplishment and creation at the end of the day. I can look back and I made this, or I did that, or I've got half of that completed. You can come in, feel it, touch it, carry it. It'll be here tomorrow, next year. And that's what I like about working with my hands, is that satisfaction at the end of the day. I'll be, sometimes bone tired. I feel every ache and pain, but at the end of the day, I'm tired. There's a great deal of satisfaction that comes from a day in the shop well spent.
What advice would you have for someone who maybe is thinking about leaving corporate America and starting their own business, similar to what you've done?
Corporate America certainly has its rewards, but if you're ready to go out on yourself, go out on your own, I would encourage everyone to do it. But choose something that you really want to do, because there are, I don't want to say hard times, but there are challenging times through that, and only some of which is related to what you want to do. There's the legal aspects, bookkeeping aspects, record keeping. If you're going to have employees, all of these things you didn't have to think about when you're getting the paycheck. Suddenly, you're the one writing the checks. Funding, financing, banking relationships. These aren't insurmountable issues, but they're things you need to think about. So when I left KPMG, one of the first things I got rid of my fancy car, downgraded all kinds of things. It's like living when you work for a salary in corporate America and you're on the way up. As I was, my career trajectory was pretty much a straight up line. And my salary kept increasing, and I thought, well, that's going to go on forever. Well, typically your spending patterns increase in anticipation of increases in wages. Well, the reverse is true on the other way down. And so, you stop eating out at the fancy restaurants. You stop buying all the clothes, the cars, everything that goes along with it. These are trappings of success, and you have to kind of look the part. My advice is do something you love what you do.
Was it hard to trade in the fancy car to, change your spending patterns, that kind of thing?
Not really. I was clear-headed with what I did like. I like to drink well, I like to eat well. So I learned to cook, and my wife and I, we both love to cook. And while I enjoy fine dining, we can do just as good a job, sometimes better, in our home. So we like to entertain. When you appreciate a bottle of wine in a restaurant and the markup that goes with it, you can often find a better bottle of wine for much less. Same thing with a mixed drink. I don't need more suits and ties, and I don't need more clothes. And once you've had fancy cars, it's just a car.
You can learn more about Sergio Raynal's fine custom woodworking at sergioraynal.com. I can tell you that everything he builds is absolutely beautiful.
It is. I took a look, and I totally agree. This is such an interesting story, and there's all kinds of questions swirling around in my head, but I'll try to limit it to just one or two. So it's obvious that Sergio does not miss the fancy cars and the suits and the frequent flyer miles and all the other stuff from KPMG. But did you get the sense that there's anything about consulting work that he does miss?
He misses working with a team. At KPMG, he had 25 direct reports that he was collaborating with, that he was working with, and I think he enjoyed that collaboration. In his current studio in Hilton Head, South Carolina, candidly, it's pretty much just him. And I think he misses the camaraderie of having a large team to work with.
Well, that makes sense, and I can actually relate to that. But I can't get my mind off of this billing rate that he had, right? He was billing at $1,400 an hour, which is like this insane number, right? I'm sure he's not billing at that kind of rate now, but do you think that his new line of work is financially rewarding?
His new line of work, is he making as much money as he was at KPMG? No, clearly he wasn't. And of course, we all know that, just because you're billing $1,400 doesn't mean you're taking home that. You're taking home a much, much smaller portion of that. But anyway, his new line of work is, he's able to live very, very comfortably on it. He travels with his wife. He eats well. He dines well. He enjoys where he's living, and so I think his new line of work suits him just fine financially.
Well, that's a great ending to a really interesting story. I'm so glad that you found Sergio, and what a cool, great interview. Thank you for bringing him to us.
No problem. It was a great one to interview, and just in terms of Sergio as well as others, we would certainly encourage you to check out the full line of our interviews on Second Act Stories on our website, secondactstories.org. Right now, we have 138 episodes of the podcast, and there are just some great, wonderful stories on there that we hope you'll check out.
And the other reason you should go to our website, because right at the top of the homepage, there's a little box that says Nominate a Guest, and when you click on that, it opens a little form, and you can submit anybody you think might be a great fit for our show. We definitely want to hear from you. We found lots of great guests that way, and we want that to continue. So we're always looking for a good story.
We hope you'll keep listening. There are more Second Act Stories just around the corner.